Hey, this is Kim, and we are kicking off today's video with the Lowland Kids half zip sweater tutorial. Guys, this one is a big deal when it comes to the Lowland pattern world because it's the first zipper pattern and we're so excited to have it. So there's a lot of pieces. There's a back piece. The front piece is split in half. There is the sleeves, the neckband and or hood, the zip cover, the zipper, the handcuffs, the cuffs that go on the arm. There you go. If you're doing the pocket cover, literally look at so many pieces. Okay, so we get started by taking the back piece and the two front pieces, and we're going to sew the shoulder seam. At that same time, I'm taking my two zipper pieces and you're going to sew along the curved line. Everything I'm doing is with the serger unless I tell you otherwise. So I serged those edges. If you don't have a serger at any time, you need to be using a stretch stitch. Okay, so you're going to take that zipper guard piece and we're going to flip it right side out and then press with a iron. I didn't do that, but you know, it's a good idea. Next, I'm taking the collar or the hood piece, whichever one, and I am going to be attaching the bias tape along the bottom of the collar piece. Just beware, sometimes people have had issues with this if your fabric is very stretchy. I'm using fleece, and so it does have some stretch, but not overly stretchy. So this went well for me, but if you do have a hard time, then maybe instead of using a bias tape from the store, like what I used, you can make your own out of like a knit fabric so that it stretches with it a little bit better. Also, if you don't want to use bias tapes, you don't have to, but it does cover up the serging line, just gives a cleaner finish. So once it's attached, I did this on the sewing machine, just a straight stitch. It looks really nice and clean. Now I'm finding the center point and I'm gonna put a clip in there. You will want to pay attention to the direction of your fabric. The bias tape should be going on the bottom. So I'm testing everything out right here just to kind of give you an example. So when you place it, you'll want to make sure that your pattern is in the right direction that you want it to go. For me, I had one side of my bias tape that was like stitched cleaner than the other side, and so I wanted the one that looked nicer to be the one that shows when I fold it down. And then I pinned it all in place. Here's me doing my little test run to make sure when I fold it down, yep, the good side is showing. So I attached it with the serger all the way across, and that is good to go. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to fold the collar down. We're going to be folding the seam downward and then covering that bias tape over top. So I went about halfway over, and then I'm just going to be clipping the collar so that I know where that spot is at. We're going to use that later. So this is just me kind of marking that center spot for myself, and then fold it downward, put it over, and I tried to do a zoom in so you could see it a little bit better, how that bias tape is going to be covering up my serged edge, and then pinch it and clip that spot as well. If you are doing the hood, then now is when you place the main and the liner hood right sides together and sew the opening. Okay, so next we are going to be attaching the zipper. So here comes the big stuff. Now notice I have a really long zipper. I'm going to be trimming it at the end. So it's okay if your zipper is not exactly right to size. And I am going to open up my zipper, and first I'm measuring 1 inch down on the zipper cover and marking it with a pin because I'm going to place my zipper in there 1 inch down. So with folding the top part of my zipper down, I'm going to set it right on top of the zipper cover, and you look at the direction of how everything's facing. Because it's hard to explain like right side versus left side. So see how the straight line is facing the body of the top half of the sweater, and then I attached the zipper 1 inch down and just pinned it all the way down, or I guess I clipped it. Now we're going to be attaching it to this side, but first folding down that 1 inch so that we have that properly set up, and then I'm going to flip it over so that I'm putting the right side to the right side. So the right side of the zipper was facing up to the right side of the jacket. And I'm setting it right where I put that clip of the fold because I'm going to be folding that over. Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, wait, this can't be right. Yes, it is. You are folding it down and over, and then it's going to turn right side out later and it's going to look beautiful. So I'm folding it down. This took some adjusting. As you can see, I had to keep scooting everything down a little bit. But once you have it all set in place, then you can put your pins and clips down. Now, I don't know if I forgot to record this, but there is a rectangle piece that you're supposed to fold in half and put it under the zipper. It's going to be a zipper guard. It says that it's optional. I do recommend it. It looks a lot more professional when you add it in. So this is going to be a lot of layers. So as I'm sewing, I'm holding on to some of the threads back there to help me get going because it is just so many layers, especially with fleece. It's just thick. So I'm using my zipper foot to go right along as close to the zipper as I can get. Zipper feet are very narrow, and so you move your needle as far to the opposite side as possible so that you are able to sew as close to the zipper teeth as possible. There probably is a better science to this, but in my case, it was getting it as close as I could because of how thick my fabric was. So keeping all those layers nicely, trying not to let it stretch too much as it goes, and there's the zipper guard under there that you can see. Always making sure to backstitch, and then take a look at it. If you do need to unpick it, it's not that big of a deal. It is possible to redo. But this looked pretty good to me. I did end up going in and adjusting or fixing this part at the very top where you can see it's a little bit wider, but later it worked out. So you see where I marked the blue dot where the seam is at. I want to make sure that the zipper matches up to that seam on the other side. So the first thing that I'm doing is opening up the zipper, and I put it right side down, or I guess right sides together, and I'm marking the exact same spot where that seam, where the zipper was at on the seam on the other side. Then don't forget to fold down the excess there, and this side is so much easier. You just have to fold down the collar. And I second guessed it how this was supposed to look because I was like, oh, this folded back this way. So I pinned it in place, but then I went back and realized that that was going to be wrong. So maybe leave your other side not flipped out yet so that you don't confuse yourself about which way to do it. So fold down the zipper again, like you should. Fold the collar piece down right to where you had trimmed the collar at. Line everything up and get your pins in there. So one tip as you are sewing your zipper, I like to have the zipper mostly unzipped because it just gives you more of that freedom to sew unattached from the other side. But then as you get to a point, you can leave your needle facing down and then zip it all the way back up to get the actual zipper head out of your way. So another tip is to always start your sewing from the same point with the zipper in case it is stretching at all, so that it stretches in the same direction. There's what the zipper guard will look like. So I will be starting at the top once again and working my way down. The fleece really didn't stretch very much, so that worked out really well for me, but that is something just that you can be aware of. And once you're done, you can take a look at it, and if it looks good, then move on. If not, go ahead and fix the little parts that you need to. If you find that your fabric does have a lot of stretch and it's becoming difficult for your zipper, then using hem tape is great in this because it helps to stabilize your fabric and make it less stretchy. So now I'm going in and trimming the excess of that zipper guard and the actual zipper. And if you'd like, you can do a little stitch across the zipper to make sure that it stays in place. I know I'll be serging it later, but if you want the extra protection, then you can do that with the sewing machine now. Okay, so now we're gonna flip the sweater inside out again, and we're gonna pin the inner layer of the collar or the hood to place it down along the neck seam. So we're gonna be taking that bias tape along the neck seam so that it's covering up any of that serge stitching. And don't forget that the serging is going downward, so that just keep it all in line as it was done previously. So I found that if I laid it kind of flat and pinned it all in place, that's what worked best for me. And then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and top stitch it. And I actually did it from the collar side because I wanted the outside seam to be the most even. And I will admit, the bias inside seam wasn't the straightest ever, but that's okay. So we're going to be top stitching this at 1/4 of an inch below the seam. So don't forget, make sure that your seam is going downward. So we are top stitching the actual seam down as well as the bias tape down on top of it to cover it up and give you that really clean finish. Next up is the pocket. If you're doing this part, you're going to take the pocket strips, fold them wrong sides together so both right sides are showing, line it up along on both sides, and serge that on. Great, and once that's done, we are going to attach it. So find the center point of the pocket and match that up with the zipper there, and make sure that the two side parts are lined up as well. You just want the pocket to be centered on that top piece. And then you'll take your front bottom piece and attach that, or lay it down right side down. And I'm going to sew along that edge. So just to see how it's sandwiched, it goes the top, bottom, or sorry, the top part of the front, the bottom part, or the pocket, and then the bottom part of the front. And then the back side just has the bottom part. So I serged that across, and that is where it does lock in the zipper for you. So it has like a stopper, so to speak. And now it's time for the sleeves. So I did do my sleeve as a block sleeve, so that's why my sleeve looks a little bit short, but I find the center point and then match up both ends, and I'll do that with both sides. And I will have to attach the other half of my sleeve later. I didn't show that since it wasn't part of the pattern, but just be aware when you see I have two colors, that's why. All right, so there it is. Now that the sleeve is attached, we are going to fold the entire sweater in half, right sides together. And we'll be sewing from down the arm all the way down the side seam. And I'm making sure that the pockets are lined up along the bottom of the front part there. And that will close up the pocket on the side for you. And at that same time, I'm going to be taking the waistband and the cuffs and sewing all of those closed. Okay, so here is my sewn sides all connected. Now I'm going to take the cuff, fold it in half, and flip it around so that right sides are showing on both sides. And I'm going to fold it in half so that I can find the opposite side of where the seam is at. I'm going to do the same thing with the arm piece, and then I will match up those two pins together, just making sure that it's all centered, and then I'm placing it nicely. I do like to use clips whenever I'm doing teeny tiny arm bands, so or cuffs, I guess. And then I'll usually stick a pin to make sure that those seams are lined up nicely. And for the waistband, similarly, we're going to take it, fold it in half, stick a pin on the opposite side, and then match up the seam with the pin, and then put a pin in either side of that. And this is quartering the waistbands, that you find the 4 equal points, and do the same thing with the bottom of the jacket. So I matched up the two seams, and then I'm putting a pin in the center back and the center front, making sure to line up the pocket piece along the bottom there. And then I will take the waistband and line it up in there. In this video, it does show that I placed the seam of the waistband in the back. I later corrected that. I prefer to put mine matched up with a side seam, but that's up to you, whatever you prefer to do. So you match up all 4 spots and you'll sew that on. And once this part's done, you have finished. And it's time to sit back and admire your hard work. It wasn't even that bad, right? Didn't this turn out amazing? So I loved this jacket so much. As soon as I was done, I am making one for my daughter right away. And here's my son. It fits so nicely. He is so warm. The zipper makes it so easy to go over his big head, which we all love. And he loves his pocket, as you can see. So this turned out fabulous. I hope that you have learned something. If you have any other questions, especially about zippers specifically, let me know. I'd love to answer them in the comments below. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Be sure to follow me on social media. My Instagram is Come Create with Kim. You can also find me on TikTok with that same name. See you next time. Bye.